No, I appreciate you moving over, dude. Thanks. Hello everyone and welcome to Motorcyclegear.com. Today we are back on the 2022 Honda CBR650R, and let's go ahead and talk about the 5 things that I like about this bike. What's up everyone? I hope everyone is doing well. If you are returning to our channel, thank you for your continued support, and if you are new here, well, then welcome to Motorcyclegear.com. Okay, so another beautiful day here in Southern California, and I am once again on a 2022 Honda CBR650R. If you haven't seen our previous video on this bike, go check it out as it is the full review, but for today, we will talk about the 5 things that I like about this bike, and as we do that, we'll go ahead and ride out to the coast. Alright, so jumping right in, number 1 on my list of the 5 things that I like about this bike is the sound. That's right, stock sound, no exhaust, and the truth is, you know, most bikes just sound bad from the factory, or simply if they sound good, they're too quiet, right? And so it's, you know, it's like the manufacturer invests a ton of money into trying to hide the bike's roar, and I get it. You know, there's different regulations for factory exhaust, both on cars and bikes. There's different limits and laws and rules and all that kind of stuff, and they're really designed to be as quiet as possible to help vehicles from being a nuisance in neighborhoods and quiet areas, to stay away from sound level restrictions and all that kind of good stuff. So I get it, right? Different vehicles are sold in multiple markets, so you got to follow all the rules. Ooh, bikes. Hey guys. Anyway, so that's kind of another one. Hello. The thing I like about riding out here in SoCal is there's so many bikes. I feel like when I ride out in Dallas, I see like 1 bike per ride, and like out here in SoCal it'll probably be 30-40 bikes in one single ride, so it's kind of nice to see and you know, get to wave to people. All right, so with that being said, again, most factory exhausts, very quiet, not appealing, nothing to write home about, right? And for this bike, it really surprised me, because when I first started the CBR650R, the 649cc inline 4 that it has, it sounded a lot louder than I thought it would. It quite frankly surprised me. It just sounded more aggressive than most OEM sounds do, and I kind of had to take a double look and make sure that there wasn't an aftermarket exhaust on there, and there wasn't. So I was like, okay, Honda, I see what you did here. It sounds a lot better than, definitely not like most OEM exhausts. So for factory, the CBR650R has a really nice and aggressive sound, and it's honestly pretty loud for, you know, for factory as well, especially as you rev it up, which obviously being an inline 4, this engine likes that quite a bit. So hats off to Honda for letting this engine roar and not really trying to silence it like most of the time is done in OEM setup. It really makes this bike sound like its looks suggested it should, and I really found myself shifting a bit later and revving a bit higher. Honestly, I'm not sure if my camera and mic setup will do it justice, but I'll put it to you this way. During this trip, I had the opportunity to ride 7 different bikes, and not one of them sounded anywhere near as good as this bike does. So that's number 1 on the list of 5 things that I like about the CBR650R, the factory sound. I like this road. It's kind of like, it's kind of like a smooth, gentle cruise. It gives me an opportunity to actually, you know, be able to focus and kind of talk to you guys about what I'm talking about, but it's still not boring where it's like not dead straight. You still have a little bit of curves, a little bit of altitude change, but still simple enough to get to kind of chat it out. All right, let's keep it moving. So number 2 on my list of 5 things that I like about the Honda CBR650R. As I mentioned in my first video, I am not a huge fan of super sports on the street. Don't get me wrong. Their performance abilities, especially on the track, are just amazing and brilliant. But on the street, if you're being honest with yourself, they're a bit punishing. They're not comfortable, and they'll happily sacrifice as much comfort as they need to in their relentless pursuit of performance, right? I know there's plenty of people out there who daily a super sport, but ooh, that's a lot of bikes. What up, guys? Dang, it's like a whole crew out here. And literally every other one of them is saying, cops, 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 tapping those helmets. Oh, there's more. See, that's what I'm talking about. Like in one, this is like 6 months worth of riding in Dallas to see this many bikes. Although I'm a little bit concerned that almost every single one of them was tapping their helmet, so I better make sure I am compliant with the old speed limit, because I'm sure at some point we'll see the speed trap. Anyway, with that being said, like I was saying, you know, there's a lot of people out there who daily super sport bikes, leader bikes, all that kind of stuff, but If they tell you that they are comfortable, they're straight lying. We get it. You're cool. You're a cool guy with a leader bike and you're a rebel and all that stuff. But like, let's be real. Like your 1000 RRR or your 600 RXXR, or, you know, whatever bike we're talking about here, they're not comfortable. And I know I'm just making up like random bike names here, but you get my point. All these super sports, they're not comfortable. Long story short, super sport equals not comfortable on the street, amazing on the track. What's up, guys? Even more bikes. Yay! All right, so that's what number 2 on my list is going to be. I love that the Honda CBR650R has great performance and is a real sport bike, but it gives you that sport look and that sport performance without trying to break your back. I've done multiple 90-minute, 120-minute, you know, like 2-3 hour rides, and this bike has been completely comfortable. I've not had any issues with, like, you know, back pain, shoulder pain, wrist pain, any of that kind of stuff, and that's not something that I can typically say, you know, about a super sport. So I love that when I want to be fast and pretend that I'm, you know, Rossi, I can do that, but also when I want to relax and just cruise up and down the coast or cruise up and down this canyon and have a chill ride, you know, with some nice views and whatever, I can do that as well. So it's kind of like having 2 bikes in one in a way. Very happy with that. Again, some bikes are too aggressive, and then there are bikes that are the exact opposite, right? They sacrifice performance for pure comfort. And to me, leaning to either side just isn't good. And that's what I like about this bike. You kind of get the best of both worlds, and that's pretty rare. So number 2 on my list of 5 things that I like about the CBR650R, really great balance. Hey, what up? Really great balance between one more comfort and performance. All right, and then speaking of being a sport bike, that is number 3 on my list of the 5 things that I like about this Honda CBR650R. I genuinely feel that it has a good amount of power and a solid power to weight ratio. The bike's 649cc inline 4 makes 94 horsepower and 46 foot-pounds of torque, and weight is about 450 pounds. Now, I know 94 horses isn't a ton, but what I love is how it delivers those 94 horses, right? It's a nice high revving inline 4, which is always fun. And, you know, honestly, 94 horses is plenty for street use. My personal bike makes just over 130. And, you know, I truly feel that I can never really use that. Like, I'm never really allowed to open it up fully without getting myself in trouble. So this 94, it's a good amount, right? And then other bikes that I've reviewed, you know, they've made 190, 200, and so on. And obviously simply amazing performance. But again, I just couldn't use it. Honestly, you know, if you even use second gear fully on most of those bikes, you're going to be, you know, doing jail time. So the 94 doesn't sound like much, but it's, again, more than enough to ride fast, really have a good time, and really kind of push the pace without, you know, ending up in prison. So I do like that quite a bit. Now, the other part about the 94 horses too is I feel like a lot of people aren't realistic with what they're capable. What up, dude? With what they're capable of doing. Like, I've been riding for, I don't know, 17 years now, but I don't consider myself a really talented track rider or anything like that. So for me, like, I'm not dragging knees out here. I'm not doing, you know, dragging elbows, all that kind of good stuff. So again, 94 horses, and now I'm just literally cruising back and forth chilling. But again, 94 horses is more than enough to really get your adrenaline pumping and have a good time. And then, you know, the other thing that I'll say too is, like, people who complain about it not being enough power, there's two things I'll say to that. One is, again, I'm not Rossi out here, so I couldn't use more of that power. Like, my bike, again, my personal bike makes 130 and I can't fully use it. And then I would also argue is if you are that great of a rider, that 94 horses is not enough for you. You probably shouldn't be riding on the street, and you probably should be on the track, because obviously you're a very skilled rider and you need a place where you can fully unleash a very fast track weapon type of bike, right? So again, for street use, for your average rider, 94 horses, definitely more than enough. I hope you can kind of see where I'm going with this, right? So long story short, the power that the CBR650R makes, to me, is a perfect balance for what it's trying to achieve, a road happy sport bike, and I think it delivers it in a great way with a great sound as well. So really good combination overall between engine sound, engine power, and overall performance. All right, so let's move on to number 4 on my list. Number 4 is the looks. I think this bike looks great. Honestly, I've had a few bikes in the past, and I've seen, you know, a number of bikes in the past too that perform great, just don't look good enough in stock form, or the looks didn't match their abilities, right? Like, it's a great bike, but you have to kind of explain it to somebody, like, hey, like, I know it doesn't look that great, but like, this bike has a great personality, you know, if you know what I'm saying, right? So, you know, like, having to explain that your bike makes you laugh all the time and that looks aren't everything, right? I mean, okay, I know I'm not starting to make sense here, but you guys get what I'm saying, right? So it was never good to have a bike that didn't look as good as it performed, right? And now the looks match, or do a good job of matching or painting the picture of what this bike should be like, right? Let's go ahead and pull up in here. There's actually a canyon road back here. We're gonna have a little bit of fun in the twisties, but let's go ahead and go up this road here. So long story short, you know, the looks match what it's going to give you performance-wise and sound-wise, and I appreciate that. Now, with that being said, I know I said I wouldn't get into the 2024 revision of this bike, much in this video or in the series of videos for the 2022, but I will say that I think the 2024 looks even better. So once again, hats off to Honda for making this bike look even better in the next edition of the bike. So again, I really hope I get a chance to ride a 2024 to compare it to this 2022. Yeah, this road's really fun here. There's some really nice twisties coming up. We probably won't do too many of those twisties in this video, but should give you a pretty good idea. Like, you can actually get going pretty quick, and a couple of blind corners, a couple of hairpins, really fun stuff until you end up with a crossover in front of you that's barely doing like 30 miles an hour. So that's cool, pal. Let's just go nice and slow. Maybe we'll stop for a picnic, perhaps. I don't know, or you can just find the gas pedal. I love how as soon as I said find the gas pedal, he brakes. That's great. All right, I'll not let that ruin my fun. Let's keep going here. So number 5 on the list of 5 things that I like about this 2022 Honda CBR650R, and well, it's going to be balance. I go back to balance, right? Let's talk about suspension. Let's talk about braking. Right off the bat, I looked at the quote-unquote negatives, right? Oh, the suspension isn't super adjustable, and it's not as high-end as other bikes. It's not the best version of the brand or the best model or whatever the case might be, right? The brakes are not Brembos, they're just Nissan, right? They're not Brembo Stylimas, they're not those initial concerns, right? I looked at it and I said, okay, these could be some points that might hold the bike back. Maybe the brakes aren't enough, maybe the suspension's not enough, I don't know. But for having what I would consider not top shelf components, but rather kind of your middle of the line, trying to keep the bike under 10 grand components, the balance of power versus braking to me is absolutely great. I feel that the responsiveness of the brakes, the initial bite of the brakes, and just the overall braking ability of the bike matches and balances well with its performance. I would also say that the overall feel, balance, and stability in the handling, right, and the handling confidence of this bike is once again great. It matches the amount of power and the amount of weight of the bike. And then a big win for me is a bike with balance, right? So sport, but not back-breaking sport, handling balanced, power balanced, brake balanced, and so on. So again, overall to me, this bike just has a really good balance as a whole. I know I keep using that word balance, but that's really what it is. Let me sum it up this way. I feel like the sum is a lot greater than the parts that are on this bike, right? If you take all these parts on paper, you're gonna have a certain expectation of what this bike is gonna be like, and I really do feel that those parts delivered a greater experience than one would expect on paper. So I hope that makes sense, but that's the general feel of this bike. All right, guys and gals, that's it for the 5 things that I like about this 2022 Honda CBR650R. Be sure to visit Motorcyclegear.com, as we would love to help you out with your motorcycle gear needs. Now, you can also hit us up via phone or email, and if you'd like to share your thoughts on this video or the CBR650R, feel free to drop a comment down below. Thank you all for watching. Until next time.